Can you imagine going to Moscow when you get there and hijack a building in front of the Kremlin? Can you just
Oh,
imagine?
imagine.
Can you just
It is
imagine?
absolutely crazy.
It is
You
crazy, man.
actually you put it perfectly because you highlight just how crazy it is. I mean, if those buildings are standing empty and maybe they needed some construction work, imagine if the governments could take ownership of those buildings and actually house people that are currently living in informal settlements. That would be a much better use of the building.
The 360 Experience with Thomas M.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second episode of a weekly news update. This is an episode that I'm going to do every Friday. You know that last week we had Kuobas Kotie, but this week we have Lauren Bernardo. How are you, man?
I'm good, Thomas. I'm so excited for this chat, and I also can't wait to hear all the comments from everyone on all the different things we're going to be talking about because we live in very, very interesting times in this country.
Yeah, it's very interesting times, man. I remember the last time we spoke, it was just before the elections, and you were telling us about the organic humanity movement. How has everything been since then?
After the elections, I think all of our activists, our volunteers, as well as myself, just took a very, very long break because elections are extremely tiring. And we have been refining our organizational structure, putting more volunteers in place to get more work done. So we're going to be bringing very exciting things in the near future. It's been 3 months since the elections. At least a month and a half of that was recovering. And now we're looking towards the future. And we also are engaging with other unrepresented parties at the moment. And we're going to see where that takes us in the future, near future,
Yeah,
especially before the 2026 elections.
yeah, because I was gonna ask you about that, man. I was gonna ask you about the plans for 2026 local government elections. But before we get to that, please tell people about you because I remember last week I did an episode with Kuobas Kotie and people were like, Thomas, who is this Kuobas Kotie? So I don't want to make the same mistakes to the people who will see you for the first time. I want them to know who you are.
Okay, well, I'm Lauren Evanthea Bernardo. I started the Organic Humanity Movement in 2017. I registered it as a political party in 2018. And the main fundamental idea is that we want to maintain liberty as well as humanity in this country. Because the people that are currently in government, all of them, it doesn't matter what party, I see them as vultures, leeching off a system from the previous dispensation that is basically built, in my opinion, from what I notice, to keep South Africans oppressed and divided. That's exactly what our political system does. It divides people and it keeps everything, it keeps the status quo as is. And so we'll never actually flourish. So I recognized that a long time ago and I decided, hey, why don't we change the entire electoral and government system of South Africa? So what we're trying to push for in this country, and we're definitely going to be talking to governments and other various stakeholders about, for instance, voting for your president directly, as well as getting rid of all political party funding and creating a completely different government structure where local governments have more power to deliver basic services to the people.
Yeah. You know, I remember the last time that I had a conversation with you. Some people were really pushing back on everything that you said. But funny enough, as we got closer to the elections, people were getting very I don't know what's the word, agitated with the politicians and political parties. And people were like, but Thomas, you had the conversation with that lady, man, that lady from Organic Humanity Movement. And now everything that she's saying is starting to make sense because people know they have their love for their political parties. But as we get closer to the elections, people are starting to be realistic about what these political parties and politicians are, and they get frustrated knowing exactly that these people are still going to give them the same things that they had for all of those years. So one thing that I've realized about your organization, I don't want to say it's a political party, your organization, is that I honestly think that you didn't have enough time to actually campaign so that the people can really understand where you wanted to take the country. But I think now people are starting to appreciate what you were saying back then. I remember you also did an episode with Penuel and you also did an episode with Mike Shem, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yeah.
And I was reading the comments, and I was like, now people are starting to actually see what Lauren was talking about all along. But when you came initially and said that we want to get rid of political parties, people said no, there's no way that is going to happen.
Absolutely. You know, it really makes my heart warm that there were so many positive comments around the plan. I think that South Africans are in this like abusive relationship. You know, sometimes we know that person, that family member that just stays in abusive relationships and can't get out of them.
Yeah.
We're in that type of relationship with our politicians, and we have a lot of sentiment and emotional attachment to current political parties who spend millions upon millions on public relations just to make their image shiny and new. Meanwhile, all they're interested in is power and controlling the population in a way that benefits them. And I think it's time we liberate ourselves from these systems of oppression, and I can't wait to see it in action.
Yeah, man. You know, one of the reasons why I invited you is because I want us to do this episode, man, because I think this week, I think it was a crazy week, especially in politics. The first story that I want us to start with is that Joburg Mayor Dada Morero came out and said that the city is thinking about hiring documented foreign nationals to deal with crime, and people were pissed off. People were pissed off, man. Like, can you just imagine? Or before I ask you that question, what came to your mind when you heard the Joburg mayor saying that the city is planning to hire documented foreign nationals to deal with crime? What is the first thing that came to your mind?
You know, I think because of everything that's going on in the media and the world, it's easy to think, you know, oh no, we need to employ our people. We have a high unemployment rate. But then if you think a little bit deeper, I did think it's not unusual, I think, for the police to use foreign nationals if necessary under certain circumstances. I think the mayor is actually being rather creative in dealing with issues.
Yeah.
So I would give it a chance, understanding that we have a huge unemployment rate, but the police isn't the only sector that's going to be employing South Africans. So I think the biggest problem that he did probably was declare his plan in a public platform within a party that is so divided. So the huge hoo-ha about it, I think, speaks more about the factionalism that is still so strong within the ANC. And all the parties in this country are divided. And that should maybe, on one hand, make us feel a little bit sorry for our situation because there's no leadership in the country. But on the other hand, the more divided they are, the closer we'll get to actually changing the system. So I'll always bring it back to system change. So I think that let's give the mayor a chance and see what happens. He's new.
So you are one of those people who said that maybe it could work.
Maybe. I mean, I don't think he's going to be using foreign nationals in every single police unit. It's probably going to be mainly to deal with the problem like we saw in Durban as well. So let's see what happens.
Because one of the arguments that people actually made is that the first things that people could not even contemplate getting arrested by foreign nationals in their own country. I mean, like, I think this is one of the things that actually made people pissed off, that because you know that right now in the country, especially in Joburg, there's a huge crime that is committed by these people that come outside of South Africa. And the thought of the foreigners arresting South Africans on South African land, I think this is one of the things that actually pissed off people, that how could this person actually think like this? Because me personally, I thought that it was an insane idea, because these people do not know our languages here. So what happens to you if you speak Afrikaans and this person stops you in the road and this person only knows the foreign languages? What's going to happen with them?
That's the thing, Thomas. I think we need to understand the parameters in which the future employed foreign national police will be used. I'm not sure it'll be used for normal petty crime committed by South Africans necessarily. I think if the mayor is wise, he'll use it for very specific special units to deal with very specific crime related to illegal foreigners that are in the country.
So if you were the mayor, how would you put it?
You know, I sometimes think that when it comes to leaders in government, there can always be 50% of your constituency that disagrees with you at any given time, if not more. And so I think that he just needs to push forward if it ends up being a bad idea. So this is the thing. You can sit and you can caucus and you can debate and you can argue. Rather take a bad idea and run with it, let it fail, and then move on to a better idea that works. Yeah. And that's how I would approach it as a mayor. Joburg is a mess. It is an absolute nightmare. So you need to exhaust all options as a political leader in that municipality. Exhaust all options, see what works, lose what doesn't work, and move on to the next solution and the next solution until the city gets cleaned up.
Yeah, it's an interesting take that you come up with, because South Africans actually criticized him into apologizing.
I can understand that. You know, a politician has to walk a very fine line in the current system between pleasing their party and then pleasing the people. And it's very, very difficult. So I don't know, let's see what happens. I mean, there have been how many mayors in such a short frame of mind, as such a short time frame, and what have they actually achieved up until this point? So hopefully this mayor sticks. If he has radical ideas, creative ideas, maybe they'll work, maybe they won't, but hopefully he actually acts and leads instead of letting the internal political system get the better of him and get the better of the municipality.
Yeah, because I also remember the residents of Soweto, they also marched to his office. The residents of Soweto, they marched to his office to give him the CVs, because they are saying, man, you don't know what the hell you are talking about. You are thinking about hiring the foreign nationals, whereas we are unemployed ourselves. So that's why I'm asking you this question, because at the same time, we also have to keep into consideration that we have a huge unemployment rate. So if you were thinking of doing something like that, how would you actually make sure that you implement it in a way that people would actually understand? Because I think you also have to make it make sense to the people on the ground. I think him coming out and saying that the city is thinking about hiring the documented foreign nationals to deal with crime and left it like that, so people just went on and assumed what they assumed. That's why I'm asking you this question, that if you were the mayor, how would you actually put it in a way that would actually make sense to everyone?
It's easy. Maybe I would increase the intake of police in general in the city. Maybe I would actually say, hey, we're going to recruit X amount of South African citizens, but for dealing with illegal immigrants, we're also going to hire a percentage of foreign nationals to help with a unique issue so that we can come up with different solutions. So I'd make sure that there is a little bit of fairness in the fact that some South Africans do still, in the whole mix of things, get employed as well. Because I think in major city centers, it won't hurt to have a little bit more police presence under certain circumstances.
Yeah. So did you see that story of ANC's Justice Minister, Imbizo of VBS? What did you make of it?
So many things ran through my mind. Firstly, I'm sure you agree, Thomas, the irony that the Justice Minister is being accused. But at the same time, my, I suppose, other side of my brain wants to ask, so many things are going on behind the scenes that we don't hear about. When someone is exposed, when someone is outed, usually I think there's a reason for that. It's because someone doesn't want them in that position. Yeah. It's almost like everyone's guilty until proven innocent when they are a politician. And when it comes into the public domain, it's only because there's an agenda to get them out of her seat. But otherwise, it was a very fascinating story in general. I think that politicians are greedy. Thomas, do you know how much a minister gets paid every month?
Jeez, this.
Have you got any idea?
I think it was something like over 200,000.
Correct. I mean, I don't know exactly what it is now, but last time I checked, it was just over 200,000 plus perks, plus travel fees and all the rest. 200,000 Rand a month. I want all the listeners to just let that sink in. What would you do with 200,000 Rand a month? If you're a mom or a dad with 5 kids, 8 kids, it doesn't matter. You can create a very privileged lifestyle with that 200,000 Rand a month. And you can also invest, you can open a business. There's so much that you can do with that salary that you're getting every month for at least 5 years if nothing goes wrong. Why do these politicians want more? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, because me, when I saw that story that the justice minister that was recently appointed by Ramaphosa, the same lady that oversees NPA, the same NPA that is looking into the case of VBS, like the first question that came to my mind is like, are you telling me that the president didn't know that there's a scandal lurking over this woman's head? I mean, like you're gonna appoint this woman to be the justice minister, the same justice
Exactly.
minister that is supposed to make sure that NPA does a stellar work. And how is the NPA supposed to do a stellar work, whereas someone who oversees it is also implicated in one of the biggest cases that they are handling? So it came to Ramaphosa. It came to Ramaphosa. You know, Lauren, I always say that, sometimes when people make decisions, when sometimes people make statements, we tend to simply focus on those statements. But on things like this, I think it has a lot to do with the character of the president. It has a lot to do with the character of the president and his judgment, because how can you appoint someone? And are you honestly telling us that you didn't know that there's a scandal? Because right now, Ramaphosa is saying, no, I want a detailed briefing from this minister. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, are you honestly telling us that you didn't know that this woman who was the mayor of Polokwane, when Polokwane illegally put money into VBS and she went there to take a loan, are you telling us that you didn't know about any of these things? And if you didn't know about any of these things, what does it say about you as the president?
100%, Thomas. You know, when Nelson Mandela became the president of the country, I was very young. I don't even think I was in school yet, but this country was full of hope, ready to work in unity, put the past behind and build a beautiful nation. And then Thabo Mbeki became the president, and the economy was on the up, and things looked good, and things were exciting. But obviously, I don't know, those behind the scenes, those with the real power had other plans, and then Jacob Zuma was made the president. And I honestly want to say something very controversial, but I think the country was in a better situation when Jacob Zuma was the president, and definitely when Thabo Mbeki was the president, than what we're currently seeing under the reign and rule of President Cyril Ramaphosa. And on that note, everything that's happening with this ministry, with Tembi being accused, I think it underpins the problem that we have with our constitution. Our constitution is flawed in that the president actually appoints the ministers and as the commissioners of the Chapter 9 institutions as found in our constitution, and that is the flaw. That needs to change. You cannot have the president choosing the commissioners of the Chapter 9 institutions, because that's when the breakdown of democracy takes place.
Yeah. And looking at this case of VBS, man, one thing that is so painful about this whole case of VBS, it's almost as if right now it is starting to be a talking point of politicians. This is something that it has been politicized. I don't think that the politicians are now interested about actually having accountability. I think now it's politicized, and I think it is painful, man. You think about the people that have actually put their money into that bank. You think about the people that were lied into putting the money into that bank. We learned from different sources that some of the people have died due to heart attacks. Some of the people are suffering hypertension. People have high blood pressure because of this thing of VBS. And now you look at the politicians when they discuss this matter of VBS, and it's something that it has just been politicized. Like, it's almost as if now, man, it's a non-entity. We don't care. We don't care as long as we can point fingers at each other, but they don't really care about accountability. And I think we also, as South Africans, we have gotten to a place where we are now just looking at this thing as something that we can just point fingers to instead of actually calling for accountability.
It's almost like another distraction, just like the Zondo Commission. This corruption, as people call it, I think it's far deeper than corruption. It's absolutely evil what's taking place. but every once in a while, there's just this distraction, and then these stories come out, and then people think at least the journalist, at least someone is bringing this to the light. At least someone's doing something about the corruption. What we should be doing as a country, I believe, is just uniting and divorcing ourselves from these toxic partners of that government is, and bringing to about a completely new, in my opinion, political system, but at the very least, completely new leaders in government as we see them today. They need to be replaced. They're not doing their job. And I include all the parties that are currently in national legislature with that, especially with this new GNU, I like to call it the beast. It's not working for South Africa. They're all the same WhatsApp group. They haven't got the interests of people at all in their minds. All they are interested in are the interests of business, big business.
Yeah.
And that's not how we're going to fix this country. This is not how we're going to increase the employment rate. It's not how we're going to get people out of poverty. So you're right. You are absolutely right, Thomas.
So speaking about this, the president, do you think that he's actually going to push for accountability this time, or is just one of those cases where the media is making noise and is going to settle down and everything will go back to the normal?
I'm sure it will just dissolve and then the next thing will come along and the next thing. I don't think our president is concerned so much about accountability. I always talk about the time that he was signed in as the president and he took his oath. I remember him looking extremely happy and excited. And I'm sure he was filled with hope for the country. But I think when in any country in the world, when you take that position as the president of a nation, what happens is those that wield the majority of the financial power actually influences you. And so I think Cyril Ramaphosa has a specific role to play. I think puppets in all Western democracies, all presidents in Western democracies are actually puppets. And I think that it's just about pillaging as much resources and taxpayers' money as possible, and not actually facing the fact that this country needs to be sovereign, needs to be strengthened. The military should be strengthened. We should build more nuclear power, in my opinion, so that we can actually not just have power in our homes and end load shedding, but increase industry, which will increase economy and production of the country, which will increase our GDP. And next thing you know, we'll be thriving. But no, that's not what any of the politicians are speaking about. All the politicians that are in the GNU, the heads of the parties and everyone around them, they all have their role to play in helping the people think that we are governed, giving the people enough hope to stay in the country and not revolt, but definitely not to make the country strong. That's not on their agenda at all. Yeah. Nor is accountability, nor is transparency. It's a very serious situation that we're in, and I wish more people would wake up to it.
But do you think that people will actually wake up to it? Because speaking about that, Lauren, going into the elections, one of the things that I was heavily criticized for is that me personally, I don't believe in identity politics or the racial politics like you. I am someone who is much interested in policy. I would like to know, what are you going to do? What are you going to do to solve some of the issues? So going into the elections, I was speaking a lot about policy. So some of the people, they were heavy when it comes to criticizing me, because it's almost as if our people have been conditioned into voting through identity politics or racial politics. You must vote for me because I'm black, I'm Lauren, I'm white. There is no way you're going to think about voting for another person. You have to vote for me because I am white. It looks like this is how people are now being conditioned in South Africa. So do you think that we will ever get over that mentality? Because I think this is one thing that actually holds us back, because I will speak for my own people, for black people. Even if you go on social media, you can see that the identity politics and the racial politics is the one that is actually holding people back. People are not free to say that, no. But these people haven't said anything. You look at Ramaphosa, you look at the likes of Julius Malema, you look at the likes of Jacob Zuma. All of these people, they never said anything about policy. Umkhonto we Sizwe went into the elections without a constitution, without the structures. But now they are the third biggest political party in the country. You look at the EFF, they didn't say anything about the police. They are the fourth biggest party. ANC, they are the number one political party in the country. But if you really look at their political campaign, they said nothing about the police. They said nothing about the policy. It was all about us. We are black. You have to vote for us because we are black. And our people have been conditioned into that. Even if you go on social media, you will see this is how the people are actually taking positions on politics. So do you think that we will ever get over that mentality? Because me, I don't see how we're going to get over that.
I think, I hope everyone gets over it. OM's plan depends on it, but if we don't as a country, we'll never get anywhere. And I agree with you, Thomas. I absolutely despise when people let racism cloud their judgment. And it happens time and time again on all sides of the political spectrum. And it's extremely heartbreaking. I want South Africa to move into a space where we all just see each other as South Africans, nothing less and nothing more. And ultimately, I think we all want the same thing, and that is a better quality of life. And I actually think most people are not racist, but the loudest ones on social media are. And when it comes to choosing a political party, yes, I can understand the mistrust. I think it's a tool that's definitely used, this political system that we currently have. So when apartheid ended, the Constitution was written mostly by one man, but with the contribution of many. And then we moved into a non-racial dispensation here in South Africa. And I understand the need for political parties at the time because we came from a very racist, segregated history. But now it's been how many years since then? We need to move past that. And I do hope that with younger generations, it will naturally happen. And I think the only way we can do it, if someone that's watching this agrees with Thomas and I, with you and I, over not seeing things in racial lines, then we just need to speak up if someone does say something judgmental because of the color of someone's skin. And we need to just, yeah?
But yeah, but like that's the thing. Like people are not saying anything. Like you say that the racist ones are the ones that are allowed. And if you come and try to be, balanced and say, guys, let's stop looking at this thing through color. Let's just look at and listen to who is promising you good things and listen to the policy. What are these people going to implement? What are they going to do to make sure that you have a better job? What are they going to do to make sure that you are safe? But the people that are balanced, it's almost as if they don't even want to be criticized. So they are deciding to step back and say nothing and allow the racists to make all the noise.
It's actually very hypocritical because the people that will criticize a political leader or representative because of the color of their skin won't look at the color of the skin of the funders and see that it's the same for all the parties that are currently in government. And that's why people are just sensationalists in a way. They judge too quickly and don't look a little bit deeper. Because who funds the ANC, who funds the DA, who funds the EFF, who funds Action SA, and a whole bunch of others? It's pretty much the same people. So none of the parties are actually truly in opposition with each other. That's why the GNU is like this perfect marriage. I think they actually couldn't wait to form it because they could finally stop pretending to fight each other. Because you know what happens in Parliament every day at 1 p.m.? All the political parties, all the members of Parliament with their 100,000 rand salaries and fancy cars, they sit in the restaurant, Parliament restaurant, and they eat lunch together and they laugh together. They talk about their kids together. They talk about where they're going to travel together or whatever. And then at 2 p.m. they go to Parliament and they start arguing or sleeping, depending on who it is. And so it's all a lie. Our democracy is nothing more than an illusion to fool the people and to keep the people divided. So if there are people saying, I'm not going to vote for this party or that party because of the color of the skin of the leader or the representatives, unfortunately that means that those that are in power are winning. And we really need to push past those mindsets.
Yeah. So speaking of GNU, right now I feel like the parliament, like it goes back to exactly what you are saying, that these people are going to divide us, and while we are busy fighting each other, they will be busy eating lunch together. Because you look at parliament, there are two sides right now. You look at the whole pie of parliament. There is this side of the GNU where you have the ANC, DA, and other political parties, and you have the other side, like this is the Progressive Caucus, where you have the MK party and the EFFs of this world. And right now, people are taking the sides. Like some people are just saying, no, I favor the GNU. Some people are saying, no, the GNU are sellouts. I'm favoring the MK party. But at the end of the day, I think it goes to what you are saying, that these people will pretend to be divided, but behind closed doors, they are eating together, they are laughing together while we are fighting each other on the ground. And we don't even see that, that these people are just dividing us.
It's a very sad situation. So I really hope that people wake up to the power that they have, that we wake up to the power we have, and start doing something about it. Remember, most people did not vote in these elections. If you take the non-registered voters as well as the registered voters who didn't vote, we could form a new ruling party if all of those that didn't vote voted for the same thing. We would form a completely new party. So we can change the power, into the power dynamic in our parliament. But unfortunately, most people are either disillusioned with the system or are too scared to vote for anyone other than those that they are used to voting. The parties that have the best PR and marketing, because let's be honest, they have way more funding than anyone else.
Yeah. Lauren, another man, there's a story that actually caught my attention during the week. It was that story of KZN, what happened in Durban. According to ENCA, KwaZulu-Natal police have arrested 130 illegal foreign nationals during a police raid in the Durban CBD. Officers on Tuesday morning raided hijacked buildings searching for illegal firearms. KwaZulu-Natal police also discovered over 4 million in fake money during the raid. Officers conducted the operation in the city center, led by the police commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi and Premier Tamintuli. It comes a day after the eThekwini Metro identified over 50 hijacked buildings in the CBD. What are your thoughts, man, on what happened in KZN?
They should speak to Borrero and they should swap notes. So, I watched it. So when it comes to the issue of foreign nationals, illegal immigrants in our country, I'm very divided and conflicted.
Yeah.
But on one hand, I think of it from a very simplistic perspective. Let's bring it back to a local example. If you are the head of a family, you're a mom or you're a dad, and you're living in poverty and you're starving, you're not going to invite other people into your home to help them. You first need to help yourself.
Yeah.
And, one can get sentimental and say, Africa's for Africans, open the borders. But at the same time, you have to look at how South Africans are suffering from not being able to place their kids in schools, from not being able to be seen to urgently in hospitals and clinics. And when you hear those personal stories, it becomes clear. So there's a little bit of success. I watched that interview in KZN with the one policeman, and he was like, we have won the war. Because they had detained at that point, I think, over 73 illegal immigrants. Later it was more. But you have not won any war. You've lost the war, and now you're only beginning to think about picking up the pieces. And so it's just another example of a failed state that we have. I do hope that the detainment is handled humanely. But at the same time, this is just one small successful story, but let's see how it goes. What are your thoughts, Thomas? How do you feel about the situation?
No, man, me personally, man, looking at this thing, especially when it comes to the hijacked buildings, I think this is where my concerns is, because you look, like it's clear as day that in the CBDs in this country, even where I stay, in the CBDs, you will find foreigners living there. So the question that always comes to my mind is that how are these people actually benefiting anything from having these illegal foreigners actually hijack these buildings in the middle of the cities? Is there anything that these people in government are actually benefiting? Like that is one thing that actually amazes me, that how can people come from outside to hijack a building in the middle of CBD? Then you have our own government saying that no, man, this issue is a very complex issue. I remember speaking of this, the Joburg mayor Morero, he was speaking about the same thing recently, and he said that, guys, we know that you want us to deal with these people that are hijacking the buildings in Johannesburg, but this is a very complex issue. It is more complex than what it seems. So it's very strange to listen to the officials and the answers that officials are giving to us, especially when it comes to this, because how is it possible that this thing is happening right in front of our eyes? Like that is one thing that like it amazes me. I cannot believe that these people can come and hijack the building in the middle of the city. Can you imagine going to Moscow when you get there and hijack a building in front of the Kremlin? Can you just imagine?
Imagine.
Can you just
It is
imagine?
absolutely crazy.
It is
You
crazy, man.
actually you put it perfectly because you highlight just how crazy it is. I mean, if those buildings are standing empty and maybe they needed some construction work, imagine if the governments could take ownership of those buildings and actually house people that are currently living in informal settlements. That would be a much better use of the building. And again, it just speaks to the fact that our politicians don't care about the people of South Africa.
Yeah, like honestly, like I look like when it comes to the illegal foreigners, I don't know what's wrong with the illegal foreigners. I don't know why we have millions of illegal foreigners. I remember I was watching an interview by Moeletsi Mbeki a couple of years ago, man, on ENCA, and one of the things he said is that one of the biggest mistakes that we made as the ANC was to stop guarding the borders, because the apartheid regime, they used to guard the borders. People would not just walk in and out as they pleased. But when we took charge, for some reason, we let the borders rot. So people came in. I don't know why the ANC is doing that. But I'm looking at the cities, Lauren, man. I'm looking at the cities like, honestly, these people, and you see, just the amount of drugs that these people are discovering. And these people are selling the drugs to young people. We are talking about the young future, the future generation of this country. What are we looking at? 25% of it is on drugs as we speak, because most of them, they are unemployed. So many of them, they are doing drugs. Many of them, they are drinking beer. And these people are literally destroying the future of South Africa. I don't know why these politicians actually don't see it that way, instead of just couple of guys selling the drugs there. No, like these people are literally destroying the future of South Africa, and these people are doing nothing about it. If anything, they are just giving us the excuses. It boggles my mind. I don't want to lie.
I actually think it's heartbreaking that drugs are sold to our vulnerable children on the streets. And I think it's actually a perfect marriage, a government that is a pawn that's playing its part, and people pushing drugs onto our children, illegal immigrants pushing drugs onto our children. It's a perfect marriage for other nations and corporations that want to benefit from the resources of our country. Because while we're distracted dealing with crime, poverty, hunger, all the rest, then corporations and other nations can take what they want from our land without us even realizing it. And I think you have to look at the deeper root cause of everything. And unfortunately, it goes back to the fact that South Africa has been the country that has helped other nations become superpowers. And as long as the people are asleep, that can continue.
Yeah, man. And again, I think it also goes back to what you always say, like, Lauren, all of these things like are starting to make sense. I remember even myself, man. I used to say, but Lauren is talking like Lauren. Now you are pushing it. Now you are pushing it. But you think about everything that is happening, and you can admit that, man, we need to disband all of this political system that we have in the country. There is no way that things are going to work in the country as long as we have the current political system. There is no way. There is no way. There is absolutely no way. There is no political will to do anything about all of these issues. Like, can you just imagine how many problems we are facing today? Like, there are so many, like, from corrupt officials to illegal kingpins doing as they please, to construction mafias, to the kidnappings, to the hijackings, and all of these things are happening all at once. and we are not even winning at least one of these things. Like there is not a single battle that we are winning. We can say that we are proud of this thing. You see, when it comes to hijacking, we are proud because we have managed to like all of these things, they are rampant in the country. They are rampant. Like it always goes back to what you are saying, man. And I think people will have to acknowledge you at some point and say that whether we like it or not, we have to start thinking about what Lauren said.
Oh, thank you, Thomas. That means a lot. I think with everything we've discussed, the different articles that you've picked for the week, just imagine the difference. And really, I'd love the viewers to engage in the comments. Think of the system we have now, where the leader of a political party also becomes the leader of a nation. Is that not a conflict of interest? Can you imagine how our lives could perhaps change potentially if the people of South Africa vote directly for an independent person, not a party leader, not a party member, but an independent person to represent them in government, who also does not have the power to elect the commissioners of the Chapter 9 institutions, for example, and where there's more accountability in the election of the ministers of certain departments. Imagine what could happen if if only that in the system changed, how we could have much better transparency, because then the president of the nation hasn't got interests in his political party and hasn't got interests in business and other things. His focus is only on building the nation and nothing else. And if we can get that right, at least, I mean, I have a long list of things I'd like to change, but if we can get that right, at least, we begin to move in the right direction.
Yeah. So Ramaphosa is busy doing the Imbizos, the community Imbizos. And apparently these Imbizos have have cost the state 44 million rand. 44 million rand. And guess what? Ramaphosa says that this is money well spent.
That is hilarious. I think, you know what? All these politicians, president included, are so out of touch with the lives ordinary South Africans lead and how much it costs. I mean, do you know how much bread costs? If you have children especially, the cost of living is so expensive. And they really don't care. I don't think they can fathom it, because remember their salaries. They have security. They probably have a whole team of servants. So they don't live like us. So we are nothing but the peasants on the ground, and they have no idea what people are going through.
Exactly.
And it's ignorance, absolute ignorance.
You remember last time Julius Malema was asked a very simple question by that guy of Cape Talk. He just asked him a very simple question. How much is a loaf of bread? Can you just imagine, man, the whole Julius Malema could not answer. He said that, no, man, I don't go out and buy bread by myself.
Exactly.
I was sitting there, I was like, man, this guy is the president of a political party. And that actually prides
biggest
itself.
at the time.
Third biggest. And this guy prides himself for fighting for the poor, marginalized South Africans. And he doesn't know how much a loaf of bread costs. How can Ramaphosa say 44 million rand is a money well spent? What is it exactly? What is it exactly that the country is benefiting from these Imbizos? Have you watched one of these Imbizos? It's a joke. It's a joke. These people are just sitting there in the front. And then you have the peasants down there. And the peasants are only given 3 minutes. I remember someone saying, Thomas, don't you find it strange that the ANC is giving average South Africans 3 minutes to ask questions, but the average South Africans gave them 30 years? Only 3 minutes before even your 3 minutes is done. They chased you out. Did you see how people were actually chased out this week? People were not even allowed to finish their points. And the ANC, the ANC leadership were like, no, you are done. Get the hell out of here. Take that microphone. Give that microphone to another person. These are the people that were voted into power for the past 30 years.
It's crazy, and you get 3 minutes to talk to them. So I think these Imbizos are just a very expensive and absolute failed PR stunt. And the role of a member of parliament in a new system that OM is proposing, the independent members of parliament will be assigned geographically. So they will actually live in the constituencies they represent. And the whole point, even in the current system, that person will be assigned a constituency and they are supposed to represent the people in their constituency. So if dialogue is happening properly in Parliament, the MPs are supposed to be like in their portfolio committees or whatever, hey, our community has these issues. There's a lot of, I don't know, maybe children that aren't matriculating, maybe the wastewater treatment plants are failing. And they bring that to Parliament and they say, overall, we need to make X, Y, Z changes. What is happening instead is that they're just fighting over putting in policy that isn't going to benefit the people at all. But we must never forget that the role of a public representative is to be a voice of the people in their legislatures or councils. And they're not doing that at all. They have no idea what's going on the ground. Completely out of touch. It's insulting and it needs to change.
Yeah, of course. But like, you look at Ramaphosa, man, like, sometimes I just wonder, man, like, what actually goes on into the mind of Ramaphosa? This is one of the questions that I ask myself these questions every day. What goes on into the head of the president? Because right now, the president can see that South Africans have actually rejected them. They have rejected the ANC. And he's doing the Imbizos. Okay, maybe this is a perfect chance for the president to actually interact with the people in a respectful manner. Can you just imagine if the president did something like, you see, like in the United States, you will see Donald Trump doing a town hall, actually interacting with the people on the ground, doing the back and forth. And it will be meaningful to the people on the ground that I was having an interaction with the president. I would ask him a question. He would answer. I would push back and he would answer. Maybe we'll give another person a chance. It was a good chance maybe for Ramaphosa to actually go out there and speak with the people and reaffirm them that the ANC is still here for you and everything. But at the same time, they are doing the same things that actually made the people hate them. They are doing the same thing. And I'm like, what goes on into the head of the president? How can you allow these women of the ANC to actually give you such a bad reputation? Now you wasted 44 million rand and the people on the ground are still not satisfied. But you actually had a chance to actually go to the ground and sit with the people and listen to their grievances for once. For once, just listen to their grievances, talk to them directly, answer their questions in a respectful manner, not this nonsense of taking 50 questions and Ramaphosa would only answer like 2 or 3 if he's comfortable with that, and it's another round of questions. I feel like these people are getting perfect opportunities to actually interact with the people and redeem themselves to the people, but for some reason, no. For some reason, that's why I'm saying, man, I don't know what goes into the head of that man. Like, it goes back to that story that we spoke about. You remember that story of that lady of the Justice Department? This is the same thing. People punish them because they don't act on corruption. But still, they are in the GNU. They still appoint the same people that are going to land them into trouble. And that's why I'm saying, man, what goes on into the mind of Ramaphosa? I don't know.
So I have no idea. It's insane. Just out of touch with the people. With everything you're describing, Thomas, it just makes me think that I can't think of a single MP, councillor, mayor, and definitely not the president, who has shown that they have any kind of love for the people of South Africa. It's completely void. There's no love and there's no compassion and there's no empathy. It's just power-hungry narcissists doing whatever it takes to get power. And I think sometimes the egos make them slip up every once in a while. And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. So I guess before I let you go, Lauren, what is it exactly are you going to do to actually hammer these ideas into people's minds? Because I think you have a huge task in front of you to actually try to wake a couple of South Africans and saying, guys, whether you like it or not, this system that you love so much, these politicians that you defend every day on social media, these politicians that you are insulting people over, they actually don't care about you. So as Organic Humanity Movement, what is it exactly that you guys are going to do to make sure that these ideas, you start to hammer them into people's minds? Because I don't want to lie, you have a huge task in front of you.
It's huge, but hopefully, Thomas, you can also see it's absolutely necessary. And our plan going forward is really just to connect with as many people as possible. We are going to start engagements with other unrepresented political parties and see where we can find common ground on what points can we agree the system needs to change. And remember, those unrepresented parties have their followings as well. And
And
so the idea will perpetuate.
Lauren, before you continue, I'm sorry for interrupting you. Before you continue, how is the media treating you?
Ignoring us as usual. That's nothing new. But I'm hoping that we can still overcome that. We actually are in the process of trying to find a media liaison in the party to volunteer who will constantly, literally badger the media. Because I think it's imperative that they start talking about system change, the fact that the system is broken. But remember, Thomas, I don't know if you've actually seen some of the articles that have come out since elections. There have been a couple of key people who have criticized those that criticize the Constitution. And it's definitely members of the GNU that have tried their best to make it look like it's a bad thing to criticize our Constitution. So they have the mentality and pushing for it that the Constitution is this perfect document, when in fact it's not. It needs reform because the people that made it had their own agendas. And we need to upgrade and improve our current Constitution if we're going to have any semblance of democracy that allows the lives of individuals to improve here in South Africa.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were telling us what you are going to do to actually start hammering this idea into people's minds. Are you going to a couple of schools? Because I think that maybe start going to schools, maybe start having the community meetings slowly. And I know it's going to be a task because some of these principles are linked to some of the political parties. So when you start talking about disbanding the political parties, I know that you're going to get a lot of pushback. So I'm sorry I interrupted you, man.
No, that's okay. So our first point of call is to engage other unrepresented parties and then also to engage as many NGOs as we can to find synergy, because each of those organizations will have their own members and following. And so we want to disseminate the idea that way through other organizations, other influencers as well. I hope that soon we can rekindle some relationships with other podcasters that had us on their show where we can discuss the change of our democracy in more detail. So I think what we need more than anything is just more publicity. So many people still have not heard about us, but it's not about us. It's about system change. So as long as we can get as many people as possible talking about system change, that'll be awesome. I would love to try get our message out there into educational institutions like universities as well. We had difficulty and obstacles trying to do that during the elections, but maybe now that the elections are over, it will be a little bit easier. Because I think if we can get the youth talking about our Constitution, analyzing our Constitution, thinking a little bit deeper about our Constitution, they'll come to the conclusions themselves that some things do need to change.
Yeah. So what would you like to say, Lauren, before I let you go? Because I think we're going to have you again next week. But what would you like to say before I let you go?
The news can sometimes be very, I think, disheartening and make people feel despair. I think what's more disheartening sometimes is the fact that so many people are living such difficult lives and government is not making our lives any easier. It won't get easier. Nowhere in this current world, modern world we live in, will government give people what they want. We have to create that ourselves. I remember when Jacob Zuma was still the president, he said on the radio, I can't remember which radio station, but he said our people don't need jobs, they need land. And the radio presenters laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And I actually agree with him. Jobs equals slavery, land equals freedom. We have been drawn into this way of life in South Africa that will always keep the majority of people oppressed. And as long as we don't wake up to exactly how the financial system works and exactly how the political system works and how those two systems work together, we'll remain in the state. So the key to the liberation of this country is first the emancipation of our own minds. So what I'd like to say to the viewers is, in between scrolling on social media, learn a little bit about how our political system works, learn a little bit about how our financial system works, as well as the global financial system, learn a little bit about what global organizations have planned for our country. And I think when we start to see that, changing our entire governments and the electoral system will start to make sense to everybody.
Yeah.
Education is the key to this change.
Okay. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen, on this episode of Weekly News Update. I had the friend of the show, Lauren Bernardo. I will see you next week. Guys, please don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget again to tell us what you think on the comment sections, and subscribe. My name is Thomas Maba. So I was with Lauren Bernardo. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.